Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Fire and Ice podcast. My name is Chris Crawford. I am joined by my good buddy Drew Silva. Today is Thursday, October 5th, and we are going to be recapping the Wild Card Series, which, if we're just being completely honest with each other, wasn't exactly the most exciting 2 days of baseball. Drew, before we get started, no baseball on Monday. Now no baseball today. No baseball on Friday. Is this a mistake?
No, I actually got a few text messages about it. First of all, this was before there was all sweeps in the wild card series round, but people were wondering, like, why are there no baseball games on Friday?
Yeah.
Why didn't they stagger the wild card series so that theoretically game threes for at least one of the leagues or two of the wild card series would have been on Friday?
Yeah.
But that all got erased with there being four sweeps in two games. There's probably not a right way to do it. Baseball gets a lot of crap for not owning their moments, and this week, especially during the week, especially on Friday, Thursday, could have been like owning the moment, owning the headlines,
Sure.
attracting sports bettors or just casual sports fans that want something to watch. I really enjoyed the last 2 days. Tuesday and Wednesday is awesome, where you have staggered baseball games throughout the day. I wish, just as a I'm a Cardinals fan. I had no skin in the game really for these series. I just wanted baseball to watch, and we have none on Thursday. We have none on Friday, but it's not really anyone's fault. Maybe there's a better way to do it, but then if you extend the wild card series too long and you do stagger it, then that's big time layoffs or layovers for the teams that earn themselves a bye. It's
Sure.
tricky. I don't think there's an easy solution. It's a lot easier to just like spout on Twitter or X about how baseball is bad at marketing, which they are.
Yeah.
But I don't really have like a right answer for it.
No, I don't have a right answer either for it, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to complain about it. And let's just
Yeah,
be
sure.
clear. This is what.
We got to do a show today, and there's nothing really to talk about. So.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's the thing is we'd love to be like previewing a game today or something along those lines, but instead we're talking about four sweeps. And look, it was great to have 4 days of games of baseball. I watched every single minute that I could. Sarah and I talked about it. I wish they were staggered a little bit more so that you could individually watch every single game. But again,
Yeah.
that's just finding a way to, what about the sport. So let's talk about these series. And let's start with what I think is a little bit of a surprising series sweep. Minnesota gets those. I kind of did the Minnesota accent there while I was doing that.
Minnesota.
Yeah, they get the 2-0 series win with a 2-0 win. Minnesota pitched awesomely and got enough clutch hits to come up with the series win. But I got to talk to you about probably the biggest thing that people are talking about in baseball right now. Jose Berrios throws 3 scoreless innings, but after a leadoff walk, comes out of the game, and Yusei Kikuchi is completely ineffective, gives up those couple of runs. I had an issue with Berrios coming out of that game. Do you agree, Drew?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's easier to say in hindsight because
Sure.
it didn't work out. But Barrios was cruising.
Yeah.
I think he looked as dominant as I've seen him in a Blue Jays uniform, maybe as dominant like as I've seen him over the last 3 years. Just in command. The pitch count was what, 47?
Yep.
And you're pulling him for another starter.
Yes.
And all right, you want to go righty lefty matchup, but he had not been through the lineup even a full second turn. Like that, I think it would make more sense if it happened even in like the fifth inning. But to do it that early in a game, I can't really get behind that. Um, just to start thinking lefty righty split so early on, and to pull a starter for another starter, I think is getting too cute and too smart. And you could put the blame on Blue Jays manager John Schneider. I'm sure it was not his decision. I'm sure this was talked
I
about
was going to say.
before the game, maybe even going into the series. They talked about this being the plan, but I think maybe you want to deviate from that plan. Like, I don't know. You and I talk about this a lot, but there's like a human element in baseball. When
Yeah.
a pitcher's feeling good, you ride that pitcher until you really see like signs of real danger. And in elimination games, teams panic, and there's going to be short leashes for starters. But that was way too short of a leash, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. And look, not all three shutout innings are the same, right, Drew? Like we see guys who throw three scoreless innings and they're struggling to get through it. They've given up a bunch of hard contact. They've walked a bunch of guys. That wasn't the case for Barrios. He threw 32 of 47 pitches for strikes. He
Yeah.
did walk that leadoff hitter. I just don't understand the decision. And honestly, I don't understand the decision either of if you're going to make that call, have Kikuchi start the fourth inning. Have him come in as a fresh guy. You know, this is a starting pitcher. They have a routine. They're used to an acclimation of coming in with clean innings. It made zero sense to me. And also, Drew, we've projected, I think, everybody, the Blue Jays, to have these breakout seasons. And it seems like for like 5 straight seasons. And it's another disappointing year. Do you think there needs to be regime changes in Toronto or some sweeping changes, or is this still a team that feels like it's on the rise?
Man, I talked about how this was a really exciting team for me going into the postseason. I thought they could make a deep run. I liked them as a long shot World Series player. I really
Same.
liked them as a fairly long shot. I think they were plus 700 to just win the American League. You know, that leaves the possibility that they get into the World Series or something and get dominated by Atlanta or Los Angeles. But I for all year and even the last 2, maybe 3 years, I've wanted them to be a better team than they were on the field because I think on paper it looks like a great lineup. It looks like they had the pitching depth um, to have postseason success, to have more regular season success than they had. I don't think there needs to be any changes. Honestly, I think it's actually a really well constructed team. I think the front office has done a great job. I think this actually comes down to the players just not really performing. I mean, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. getting picked off second base. He didn't even like take a big lead. I don't know if that was so much his fault as it was a great play by the Twins. And
I agree.
by the way, Carlos Correa looks healthy finally. Like we've been
Yes.
waiting for that to happen all year. He looks like a guy who has 2 good feet again, which is a huge for them going forward because they've got a whale of a matchup coming up in the ALDS. But I think the Blue Jays, I'm sure it's really frustrating for their fan base and they're going to be asking for changes. But I think it comes down to just players a little bit underperforming.
Yeah.
What you would expect them to be. I really like what the front office has done to build that team into what should be a juggernaut. It just hasn't been.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think there's more positives than negatives to take, even if it is another disappointing playoff run for them. You know, they've been swept in both of their series, the Mariners last year, including that incredible comeback by Seattle, and then 2 games where, you know, the games were close, but just not quite close enough. I still think that there's some good stuff coming. Imagine me telling you that the Blue Jays are a playoff team with Alek Manoah giving you what he did or lack thereof this
Yeah,
year.
for
You know,
real.
like
Yep.
this is, I think they deserve more credit than not. They also dealt with an unbelievably tough division. Even with the balanced schedule, you still have to finish ahead of quite a few really good teams in order to make the postseason. So yeah, disappointing, but I still feel like there's something coming for Toronto in these next couple of years. Other American League series, and this one really surprised me, especially the sweep portion of it. Texas advances. They win 7-1. They sweep the series 2-0. Nathan Eovaldi was fantastic after not looking fantastic to end the year. 6 2/3 innings of 1-run baseball with 8 strikeouts. They get production pretty much throughout the lineup throughout this series, outside of really Robbie Grossman. And I guess Nate Lowe didn't have the best of series, but Josh Young looked great. Evan Carter looks like a
Ooh.
future superstar. I want to ask you this, though, Drew. Tampa Bay, it's going to be pretty easy to just say this is a team that's built for the regular season and not for October. And I talked to this with Sarah, like this team went to the World Series not that long ago. It was during the truncated campaign, but it did happen. But is this a team that's just really built for that regular season and not necessarily for postseason success?
I mean, hey, they narrowly avoided breaking the longest postseason scoring streak in history when they finally got it going in the bottom of
Yeah,
the 7th inning. I was on Wednesday, but
that's
yeah,
correct.
still a lopsided 7-1 loss in game 2 after getting shut out 4-0 in game 1. The defense was bad. The offense did largely nothing. The pitching wasn't great. That the Rays like finally looked like a bad team at the worst time.
Yeah.
And as you alluded to, like I didn't find this a very attractive roster entering the series. We've talked about that, how they had to overcome so many key losses of very important players during the regular season. If they were at full strength, it would have looked a lot differently.
Sure.
But yeah, this just didn't seem like a group that was going to be hanging up banners at the end of the year. Um, I mean, they need to spend more money. There's a lot to look forward to in 2024 and beyond, though. Like so much young talent, players under control with a lot of offseason trade possibilities if they want to get creative. Maybe a new stadium too at some point in the future. Those attendance totals at the Trop were pretty miserable. You know, I hate to criticize like fan bases, but the fewest fans for a postseason game since 1919. That was in game one, and then in
Whew.
game two, they drew like only 500 more fans. So
Brutal.
that's not much of a home field advantage when you have theoretically all three games at home. It wound up only being two. So a short and forgettable playoff run for Tampa Bay after a 99 win regular season. I, I like you look at all the players that they had on the injured list, the player who was on the restricted list for them. They were like hanging on by a thread going into October, and I think everyone knew that. It wasn't a big surprise to me that the Rangers went in there and kind of had their way with the Rays at Tropicana Field. The Rangers are dangerous, man. Like
Yeah.
I mean, they don't have Jacob deGrom or Max Scherzer, at least for no Max Scherzer for this round, at least. But Jordan Montgomery looked excellent,
Fantastic.
dominant in game one. Nathan Eovaldi looked great in game two. They could have had Dane Dunning if they needed to go to a game three. And they can, I mean, with the rest that they have now going into the ALDS, like they can line up their pitching however they want. And man, Evan Carter just doesn't take a bat at bat. Like we talked
So
about, I don't think
impressive.
he's taken a bat at bat in the major leagues yet.
No.
And yeah, that's going to be a really, really scary team going into the ALDS. But I don't know. What do you think about the Rays? What would they need to do besides, spend a little bit more money, go
Yeah.
get an impact bat,
Yeah.
it's time for them to get a little bit uncomfortable payroll wise. I don't know what I can't like speak to Tampa area real estate. And like I know they're building the new stadium generally in the same place as the Trop. I've
Right.
read from people that live down there that this is actually a better site. I don't understand like there's bridges and highways and that stuff I've been to Tampa when I was like 8 years old, but
Sure.
I don't like have a on like ground floor understanding of what exactly is going to work.
Yeah. Hashtag not a Tampa Bay expert as well, but I'll be very
Mm.
curious to see how that plans out. And they need it really bad. And look, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but the guy you signed to your biggest extension is somebody you're not going to be paying next year. So you
Yeah.
need to go out and go spend some money. Go and look. They signed Zach Eflin to a pretty sizable contract. They've gone out and player when they. You always hear general managers say it when it's the right fit, we'll spend the money we need to. So maybe they actually are somebody that it kind of makes sense for. But I'm really curious to see what they do going forward because this is nice and winning 99 games is a heck of a lot of fun. It's not the goal. The goal should be to win world championships, and Tampa Bay has come short of that. We're not going to offer series predictions. I would just want to ask you this. Which series are you most intrigued by? Are you most intrigued by Rangers versus Orioles? Or are you more intrigued by Twins against Astros?
Rangers Orioles, I think is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, there's a little bit more cachet to it. I don't know. The Astros are beatable. I think they're both interesting. If
Oh
that's
yeah.
like a terrible answer, but Rangers Orioles like sticks out to me. Maybe it's because of the clashing colors that I really like in it. And Camden Yards is going to be rocking. They're excited to have a division title winning team going up against that Rangers squad. I don't know. The Rangers offense against the Orioles pitching seems like a bit of a mismatch,
Yeah.
but the Orioles offense and what they can do with platooning guys and how comfortable their guys are being platooned,
Sure.
that's obviously a very dangerous team too, at least on the offensive side. And is Jordan Montgomery going to be as good as he was in game one? Is
Gonna have
Nathan
to be.
Eovaldi going to be as good as he was in Game 2 of the Wild Card Series? That's probably asking a lot. I think there's going to be some high-scoring games in there between those two teams. I would say I'm most for like excitement factor. I would say I'm most looking forward to that series.
I am as well. I Twins Astros has a chance to be a really good one as well. I think Minnesota's starting pitching staff is so underrated, the most quality starts
Yeah,
of any team in baseball. And they have so much intriguing young talent. How can
Louis
you not be?
Varland, by the way. Yeah, did you see
Yeah,
his inning, man?
yeah, yeah. They've got, and that's going to be big for them because there's no doubt about Yohan Duran being one of the best, most talented closers in baseball. It's about the bridge to get to him, and having guys like him available to be that bridge, I think, is going to be really big. Yeah, I like both series quite a bit, but if you're asking me which one I'm definitely tuning in for, I'm going to be tuning in for all of them because they paid me to do it. But I am definitely going to be recommending Texas versus Baltimore. Sorry, Tampa Bay. In the National League, this one surprised me as well, especially the 2-game version of it. Diamondbacks win 5-2 and sweep that series. Zach Gallen pitched pretty well, not the most dominant start, but 6 innings of 2-run baseball. And the bullpen, despite Kevin Ginkel not exactly having his best game, is able to get the job done again. The biggest concern I had for Arizona was that bridge to Paul Sewald as well, just, because it had been such a mediocre bullpen, but they more than did the job. And I'll ask you this, Drew, how much credit do you give to the Arizona bullpen, and how much discredit, for lack of a better term, do you give Milwaukee's offense in this series?
You've got to be pretty frustrated if you're a Brewers fan.
Yeah.
I mean, this. I don't know. To go like grand scheme of things, this could be the last year where they have Brandon Woodruff, Corbin
Yeah.
Burns, and Freddie Peralta all together.
Yeah.
Do they like fully blow it up? Which is sad to say, but like that's the way that they've operated. They traded Josh Hader when they were leading the National League Central last year. Do they like consider getting rid of some offensive players, even like any offensive player that is not under control for a long
Sure.
time, but that would have trade value? I'd be worried that there's going to be like a kind of a big sell-off in Milwaukee when they really should be adding.
Right.
They should be adding some offense, some more reliable bats. Because I mean, they have a lot of intriguing young prospects, intriguing young outfield talent.
Mm-hmm.
It was a surprise to me that, and this is hindsight, but Garrett Mitchell being left off
I totally agree.
the wild card roster because he returned for the final 4 games of the regular season after having shoulder surgery from an injury back in April. But he could have been a little bit of a offensive performer, you'd think. I don't know. He hadn't played very many games. Maybe they just felt like he wasn't ready. But he would have been a boost to the offensive potential in center field. Sal Frelick had a really good first several weeks when the Brewers called him up, but he had slumps down the stretch. Tyrone Taylor had to finish the year on a high note.
Mm-hmm.
But they need more offense. They need more offense to add to that pitching. But now you look at the offseason, they're probably going to lose one of those top flight starters in a trade because they can't afford to sign them to a long-term contract. They can't afford to sign all of them to long-term contract extensions. I don't know. I would be really frustrated that ownership has not taken advantage of. I mean, they've made the playoffs 5 of the last 6 years. That's an incredible run for a small market team. It's in a bad division, but I'd be pretty upset that they didn't capitalize and get a little bit uncomfortable payroll wise. That's what I say, like with the Rays.
Yeah.
Get a little bit uncomfortable when you know you have the right nucleus to actually be a potential World
100%.
Series winning team. Just sadly, no front office operates like this anymore.
It's the way the sport works. Like, unfortunately, efficiency has probably become too good, and it has made the sport worse, in my humble estimation. I understand it, and I can appreciate it to a point, but it does actually think. By the way, Jesse Winker as your pinch hit there instead of Garrett Mitchell. I think I'd rather have Garrett Mitchell making those at bats than Jesse Winker.
And Winker like strained his oblique again.
Yeah. The fall for Jesse Winker is something, because not long ago, this was one of the best offensive players in baseball. Now a guy that you just absolutely cannot trust. Corbin Carroll. 571, 667, 1.143. No, that's not his OPS at the end. That's a 1.143 slugging percentage. Yes, it's all of 2 games. I mean, this dude's a star, Drew.
Yeah, obviously your runaway NL Rookie of the Year, and he's going to be, I think, maybe the consensus number 2 overall pick in fantasy drafts next spring, right behind Ronald Acuna Jr. Just all the athleticism, the full category coverage that you could want, and what a talent to have there at the top of your lineup. Ketel Marte getting hot is like a huge deal,
Massive
for this offense as well. What do you have? He had a homer in game 1, and then a couple RBIs in game 2. I forget exactly, but he's dealt with a lot of injuries over the years. They've moved him to different positions. Sometimes he's reliable, sometimes he's not. But when he can like stir the drink for that offense, it goes a long way. Tommy Pham dealt with a little turf toe toward the end of the regular season. I think it has leaked into October as well. But he can be an impact bat in that middle of that lineup. Christian Walker, we know he can get hot. I like this Diamondbacks team. I mean, I liked them going into the year. There were some stumbles until they finally got it going again. Do I trust like Brandon Pfaadt in the next round? I don't know. We're gonna have to like save this analysis for Friday's show.
Sure.
There are definitely holes you can punch in this roster, especially with the matchup that they're facing with the Dodgers, a very familiar opponent. They're going to be a big time underdog. I haven't looked at what the odds are, but yeah, congrats to the D-backs and locking up Mike Hazen like right before game 2 to a long-term contract extension. You can't really argue with the job that he's done leading that front office, and they look really promising for the future. Maybe like making some noise with the Dodgers next year at the top of the division, like actually going for a division title.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I think that there are some moves that need to be made, and it's worth pointing out that they absolutely backed into this postseason spot as well, and took advantage of the fact that the NL Central was mostly non-competitive for most part. The bottom of the NL West not so great, but absolutely credit for taking a team that won 52 games 2 years ago to a postseason appearance. The other series, I mean, look, this was a mismatch on paper, and it was a mismatch in the games played. Philadelphia advances with a 7-1 win. They sweep that series. Aaron Nola was fantastic. 7 innings, 3 hits, just the 3 strikeouts, but a lot of weak contact. A Ryan Kirkering, by the way. I know it was in a fairly low leverage thing. That dude looks like a stud. Like, that was really impressive. Also a terrific name. I did a podcast once with David Roth, and he drafted him very early after seeing that name. Braxton Garrett, I thought actually was better than his line suggested and showed some swing and miss stuff. Yeah. But the bullpen, not so great. This was a team that relied on 1-run luck in order to make the most postseason in the Marlins. But it's just pretty simple, Drew. The Philadelphia Phillies are just a lot better. I know that the results here say that Philadelphia was only 6 games better than the Miami Marlins. You saw the talent disparity over the series.
Yeah, and obviously as baseball analysts, maybe like smart baseball analysts, we try not to take much from a best of 3 series that only lasts 2 games. You try not to like draw big conclusions, but from this one, I think you could draw the conclusion that the Marlins were not at the level of the Phillies, and probably not at the level of any other team that was in the wild card series on either side, which is fine. It was a really cool story, and they certainly took advantage of the fact that the NL wild card mix toward the end of the year was a dumpster fire. Good for them. I like Skip Schumacher as manager. I like Kim Ng, as their general manager.
Love her. Yeah.
Hopefully they can keep trudging along. They've got an incredible treasure trove of young pitching. Some of their like outfielders have finally started. Like, Jesus Sanchez had good spurts this year. Mm-hmm. Brian De La Cruz had good spurts this year. There's a way to build around that. Hey, the midseason trades for Josh Bell and Jake Berger worked out great. So I think hopefully they've got a lot to look forward to. But yeah, Philly, Philly is dangerous, man. And here we go again. Phillies and Braves. Just that was just like last year, right? In the NLDS, what the Phillies got through.
Yeah.
I mean, this Atlanta team is a monster. They set all sorts of records during the regular season. But I agree with you. Like, my biggest takeaway almost from that game two, from that series, was Orion Kirkering. Is that how you say it? Orion Kirkering.
Yep.
Because the Phillies have needed a bridge reliever, and it's really important in the postseason. Probably, becomes less like evident in the regular season, but man, you need a fireman in the 7th, 8th inning, and hopefully he can be that for them, because they had the starting pitching. I think the bullpen as a whole is a little bit better than it was last year, but the roster construction is pretty similar to last year when they went to the World Series, maybe even a little bit better. I think Braves Phillies is going to be an awesome series with great environments in Atlanta, and I mean, Citizens Bank Park during the playoffs is always like, it's fun to tune into one of those games. It just makes you jacked up, excited. I don't know. I think the Phillies are as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than they were last year. And Atlanta, with this layoff, they're trying to stay fresh with intra squad games, but they've got a real challenge coming.
So I'm not going to ask you what series is more intriguing, because that's a dumb question. All due respect to the Diamondbacks and, the Dodgers, a little bit of a division rivalry. Yeah. There's some question marks about the Dodgers starting rotation, but let's just be honest with you. It's more compliment to Atlanta, Philadelphia than it is insult to Los Angeles, Arizona. It's the more intriguing series. But let me ask you this. Is this the real NLCS between Atlanta and Philadelphia? Is this, on paper anyway, the series that really determines maybe not even who wins the National League series, but who wins the World Series?
I don't think you could say that without including the Dodgers in it, right? Because they would be up there as probably a top 4, even though they have a lot of pitching problems. That offense can go as nuts as the Braves offense can go nuts sometimes. But it sure feels like a bigger series than the other one that's happening in the National League. Hey, man, the pesky Diamondbacks can make some noise against the Dodgers. I'd be intrigued on seeing what the odds are on that. We'll dig into more of that on Friday's show and actually talk about some lineup stacks and like some starting pitchers to actually use if you're playing DFS or trying to bet on these games. But yeah, obviously, like, center stage, Phillies Braves is kind of what we thought that we'd see eventually in the playoffs. We're getting it in the NLDS, and it's gonna be a wild series to watch.
I'm really looking forward to it. Those teams have a great rivalry. It's been 30 years since the 1993 World Series. That's what I was predicting. I was hoping for that Toronto-Philadelphia, but I'll take this as well. Thanks so much for listening to the Fantasy Fire and Ice podcast. Be sure to follow us on all of our socials. Drew and I will be back for that LDS preview tomorrow. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next time.